some people might be surprised to see you, Charles, here in this Saturday night edition of Sunday with Charles. How are you?
Very well indeed, Jason. Thanks for accommodating my schedule, but I'll actually be flying for a number of hours when we normally would do it. So I appreciate this change.
You're the traveling man all over the place like crazy. Actually, it kind of is Sunday where you are that we won't talk about, but I know how you like to reveal kind of your previous destinations, and so I thought it would be appropriate to talk about that.
Yeah, I was last in Hong Kong actually in 2004, and so it was interesting to see it 20 years later, and then to contrast it with some of the other entrepôts around Southeast Asia. And I would say the growth trajectory in Singapore and Kuala Lumpur is a lot more impressive. Perhaps there was a reaction to what happened with the protests and the counter to the protests, and I think a lot of capital may have left Hong Kong. But nonetheless, it's one of my favorite cities, and it's a place that it's not far away from Penang, and so I hope to return.
Yeah, I had a buddy from L.A. Well, he was actually from Austria, but he lived with his wife in Hong Kong after I moved out of L.A. They left when all that stuff happened. So yeah, I think a lot of Europeans have left Hong Kong.
And there are a lot. It's interesting what's happening is, and now that I've been doing so much traveling, I see it actually personally. I don't know that it's a scientific study or anything, but in places where you have excessive bureaucracy, and Europe would be the worst, because there you have local government and regional government, national government, and EU governance and UN governance, and all these. Most everybody in Europe seems to be working either directly for a government, retired from a government, or working in the private sector but on contracts from the government. And it's in Europe where the prices are highest, where the tolerance for dissenting views is lowest, and where the future is bleakest. And shouldn't it be obvious to the people who are resisting Doge already, even though it hasn't technically been formed, that the slice of the global economy that needs to go on the most rigorous diet is the slice connected to governance, because you don't need much government today, particularly if we go down a path of trying to promote peace. A big slice of any government is military spending. Another slice, given all the waste, is interest on the debt and principal repayments. We don't need Pete Buttigieg to go out and hire McKinsey to give us a report on the fact that most road surfaces are black and therefore racist. I mean, we just don't need that. And there's a lot of other stuff that we don't need. And we don't need Klaus Anal Schwab telling us that we should all eat shit water and crickets in our tiny little apartment box in which there's no furniture or possessions because we're very happy not owning it. We don't need nitwits like that. And I hope we're going to get back to enjoying the remaining moments on earth that we have left in freedom and liberty. That's where most of us want to be. We don't need, a czarina of disinformation without naming names, who is going to tell us what is malinfo, or write a PhD thesis on the distinction between malinfo and disinfo, and
They're in trouble, those people. They're being basically called out directly. Now, but Charles, what about all these people who are saying there's some guy in Congress who said he's going to create a shadow this and a shadow that, coming right out and saying, that's not supposed to be the purpose of Congress, to obstruct the other party, right? I mean, that seems kind of counterproductive.
Well, again, this whole idea of political parties, I mean, it's not mentioned. There's no mention of political parties in the Constitution. But they quickly came into formation. And you could argue they made sense pre-internet and pre-advances in technology, which now allow communication as we're doing, and with wider audiences as the unobstructed, unsuppressed channels are able to do. You don't need some party boss. You don't need a party platform. You don't need to pay dues to a party. And whether under W. Bush or Clinton or Obama or you name it, both political parties have, I would argue, conspired to destroy the private sector and make people in the private sector more dependent on government than ever. So political parties, in my view, are obnoxious. That's why I left the Republican Party when I did.
Charles, it was this guy, Willie Nickel.
Who dat?
That's the guy who said, "Oh, we're going to have a shadow cabinet. We have to step up our game," he says. "We have to go toe-to-toe with Trump. And it's not just about saying, you know what."
Well, wait a minute. Is that a picture of him? What's behind him? Fannie Mae?
Yeah.
Is he affiliated with Fannie Mae?
I don't know. He's standing in front of the sign. It says Representative Willie Nickel, Nickel, a Democrat from North Carolina, speaks during the D.C. FinTech Week event in Washington, D.C. I think he's just speaking at the event, and they're probably doing something with financial technology, so they're projecting on the wall there.
Yeah, but my point is this is the worst possible picture for this guy to show. I mean, Fannie Mae is one of the most corrupt, quasi-public financial institutions ever to exist. This institution under Jamie Gorelick was the vice chairman of it. She pulled out $15 million. This is the institution that basically made the financial crisis of 2007 to 2009 worse than it should have been.
Well, here, I put in Willie Nickel Fannie Mae, and it gave us all this.
Yeah.
Oh, he's doing things. I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, this kind of a guy, the concept of shadow government is one that exists in England and other countries, but it is not a concept in the United States. There is no such thing as a shadow government.
Yeah.
Fuck this guy.
Well, I don't know. We could look into him more, but he seems like a douche just on the surface.
Of course, we had an election contest. This idea of shadow government is, we don't like the results of the election, so we'll pretend that it didn't exist and that Trump doesn't have a mandate and he didn't have a landslide.
Right, that's what I mean. He's just deciding to fight Trump. That's not the purpose of Congress.
Yeah, let him spend a lot of time, on PMSNBC, and CNN, DNC. Let him go, speak to the three viewers of those places, but he's irrelevant.
Something weird happened, Charles. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a court-ordered, liquidation or something of Alex Jones' Infowars, and then Alex Jones came back and said that the judge overturned it and said that they did something kind of like illegal with the auction, and the auction was invalid. Like Alex Jones is back, but they don't seem to be reporting on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on bankruptcy law, but in a bankruptcy, you're supposed to conduct an orderly disposition of the assets, and you're supposed to pay whatever creditors you can pay. And evidently, they rigged this auction to try to give Infowars to the Onion. And there's also a story in there about supposedly X has filed some sort of legal paperwork in connection with that matter. Maybe Elon Musk
going to buy it.
Maybe
Elon Musk is going to own Alex Jones. That would be hilarious.
Yeah,
but he said he hated him.
But it's a good point, and we're kind of zigging and zagging a little bit here, but it's a good point to bring up that, and you're not going to see this in the mainstream media much, but the biggest loser in the election of 2024 was the status quo, where you have a White House press briefing and you have some Haitian lesbian getting up there and deciding, how big a lie she's going to tell on a given day. Those days are over. The notion that the White House can dictate, tell ABC, CBS, and the big NBC and whatever. This is the story that you're going to put out there. Don't ask us for any evidence. Just sell this story, and then the talking heads say, "Okay, fine. I like my $3 million salary. I'll do what you want." those days are gone. Trump apparently is, or somebody in the Trump team is floating the idea that, even Crowdsource the Truth could get a seat in the White House briefing room ahead of ABC, which would be hilarious. You start getting podcasters and alternative media in that room.
She was pissed, Charles. Karine Jean-Pierre. She's had some real clownish outfits that she's put on, and particularly with that hairstyle, it just looks ridiculous. But she was getting pissed off because,
You mean Buckwheat's sister? I mean, this is. I mean, this is just it's not even a clown show, right? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, I guess it's really long time since the Little Rascals have been on. When you Google buckwheat, this is all you get.
Well, that's because Bill Cosby bought.
Yeah, he didn't like it,
and he's buried it.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, there's the paragon of virtue. But no, seriously, I mean, you think about when history is written about 2024 election. Joe Rogan's podcast, the fact that Kamala Harris thought she could negotiate her way out of it, and in contrast, that not only Trump but Vance sat down for 3 hours or so with Joe Rogan. I mean, who would have thought that would have played the kind of pivotal role that it did play in the 2024 contest, say back in 2016? A podcaster, leading podcaster, but
wait a minute,
a podcaster would basically wield such influence. I mean, how many millions of votes did Joe Rogan's podcast swing to Trump over Harris?
Forget about 2016, Charles. Think about, I don't know if you ever saw this show Fear Factor, but look, this was the days when Joe Rogan still had hair. This show was a weird combination of like kind of physical challenges, like almost like the Olympics or something, going through obstacle courses and then eating all kinds of disgusting stuff. This is buffalo testicles here. Sometimes it was live spiders. It was crazy. But then one of the key things was they would get like models, hot women, and then make them eat like buffalo testicles. And this was the show he was the host of. But it's a funny and great show.
Maybe that's the way we should do the 2028 primaries.
Fear Factor. Yeah. Have Joe Rogan just make them all eat moose testicles.
Well, but, thinking, it's funny. I'm going to bring two crazy stories together. I mean, thinking that Kamala Harris was a reasonable choice after Joe Biden, barfed in the only debate he had with Trump this time, thinking that you could just install Harris in there would be like, the news I'm going to reveal. I really don't want to do this because, I could get hurt, but I'm going to be fighting Jake Paul. I'm training up for it. I'm going to be doing it next year. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, you know what? I got to say, I was a little surprised that Mike Tyson, not to diverge to boxing, but you did bring it up. I thought he would beat Jake Paul, but I think being 58, it's interesting, Charles. I was watching a sports doctor on YouTube analyze that and said that this doctor said he thought it was unethical that they allowed Mike Tyson to do that fight, because he said that, first of all, Mike Tyson is an athlete and he's a boxer, so he's had head injuries. But even without that, when you're 58, the neurological whatever and the speed that he can react when he's getting punched, he said there's just no way a guy who's 58 can fight somebody who's 27 and not get. He was actually commending Jake Paul for recognizing this and not hurting Mike Tyson.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice to think that you could go back and be competitive with somebody 30 years younger than you. But I mean,
it's not 1988 anymore.
Yeah. Well, the reality is, it's actually one of the very few things that I remember from business school as being something important to think about in business, and that is, you should, most of the times when you're talking about it in business, you're thinking about winning. You're thinking about more revenue. You're thinking about succeeding. You're thinking about, positive things. But it's very important also to think about the consequences of losing. I mean, can you afford in a contest to lose in the dramatic ways in which you might lose, and being knocked out cold and killed at age 58 is something you really should be thinking about. So maybe Tyson didn't. Maybe he assessed that probability as very low. Maybe he wasn't thinking at all. But yeah, this is. I'm just glad he wasn't killed.
Yeah, and I
Because he
mean,
is
from an
funny as hell,
entertainment,
like that.
he is. He's a funny and interesting guy, and I still like him as a boxer. But in retrospect, it was not even a very good boxing match to watch. And 58-year-old guys, boxing is obviously a young man's sport. Even at 27, Jake Paul is pretty old to be a boxer. Mike Tyson was in his heyday when he was 19 and 20, knocking people out in 90 seconds.
Well, it's better. It's better than watching Joe Biden at the beach. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Joe Biden never had a heyday.
Yeah.
What is Joe Biden even doing? If we put in Joe Biden and then just tap on news, it's probably blank. Marry Trump. Lobs new accusation against Joe Biden. What?
Who
I
does?
thought she doesn't like Trump. This is Mary Trump, President-elect Donald Trump's estranged niece, accused President Joe Biden and the Democrats of complicity. This Mary Trump is crazy, I think.
And no question. You know, she's crazy. But now, in the free segment here, we should talk a little bit about Matt Gaetz.
Oh yeah,
because here in the first instance, when let's say the cartels, the drug cartels, they're not sitting there saying, you know what, we really like Donald Trump. We think that we could do business with this. And they're not like the organizers of COP 29 or whatever that fucking freak show is in Azerbaijan, inviting the Taliban. Yeah, let's get the. Well, it's very important.
How do you get their address to even send them the invitation?
Exactly right. Cave 29. But it's Matt Gaetz. You've met him. I've met him briefly. He is young, very young, and he's very rich. His father's rich anyway, and he's in Congress, so he's gets a lot of media access.
His brother-in-law is rich too.
Huh?
His brother-in-law is rich too. His brother-in-law
is rich. Yeah, and so, but the point of it is that, Trey Gowdy, who's been very critical of Matt recently, and others had their chances. I mean, Trey Gowdy was in Congress. He could have done a lot to work with Trump in the first term to destroy the swamp, and he didn't do it. And he's now, who knows how he gets paid these days. And the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump has every bit the same right to appoint the attorney general that he wants. I mean, let's think about Barack Obama. He appoints Eric Holder, who's a miserable piece of shit, belongs in prison, as his attorney general. And that fuckhead, had the nerve not only to say that he is Barack Obama's wingman. Mainstream press didn't say, oh, that's wrong, can't do that. They let Eric Holder function as Barack Obama's wingman through the first term, when he and others conspired to withhold information that would have caused Barack Obama not to win re-election concerning what was really going on in the Middle East and Benghazi and all that kind of stuff. They lied about that. They suppressed, they targeted their political enemies. And Eric Holder was centrally involved in that in the first administration, and then afterwards for a time until that second crook and dumb crook, Loretta Lynch, was put in to attempt to sweep up the mess and collaborate with the Clinton campaign to try to install her as another puppet. The mainstream press was all in for supporting that. They love Tish James and the corrupt process she's been through to target Trump. They're all fine with that. Now they're going to turn on Matt Gaetz and Republicans as well. I mean, look, as Gaetz points out and others point out, the Biden administration under the man who I hope will go to prison, Merrick Garland, they investigated Matt Gaetz for 2 years, and they could have filed charges against Matt Gaetz over this, and they declined to do so. And do you really think that Matt Gaetz and Garland are in cahoots together? No. This is an example, and it's an important thing to talk about, that you are innocent in the United States of America until proven guilty. This
Yeah.
concept of Gaetz needs to exonerate himself. No, he does not. And investigations should go over many blind alleys. There is no process in the United States where after the Justice Department declines to charge you, we, the public, have a right to go and look at, what they investigate. That's bullshit. You either
Yeah.
decide to prosecute or you don't. And
Well,
if you
here's the
don't,
interesting wrinkle. If you don't,
if you don't go spread the dirt out into the mainstream media so that this guy will be dirtied up through his entire tenure as Attorney General. That's just not right.
yeah, that's the wrinkle there, Charles, is that so here you've got Speaker Johnson saying that Matt Gaetz' ethics report should not be released. And I do believe that what they're trying to do with this ethics report, that thing's got lawfare written all over it, because it's going to be one of these things that's a privileged document that's written under the speech and debate clause rules, where they can say whatever they want in this document free of any repercussions or defamation charges or anything like that. And as you're saying, they investigate, they're accusing him of crimes. So if they had sufficient evidence to prove that he did this rather than just some woman said this, well, okay, we know that people can be convinced to say things. Releasing this report, as you said, would be tantamount to just basically making the guy guilty in the court of public opinion. This is what they love to do to Trump, to Matt Gaetz, to me, to anybody that they want to villainize. They just put out allegations and spread them around constantly.
Well, and as I understand it, this is even hearsay. This is a woman claims, an unidentified woman claims that she saw Matt Gaetz having sex with an underage person. I mean, that is to me the definition of hearsay.
Yeah, right.
And
the thing is, there's going to be different rules, though, about
my thought here. Let me just finish. I like contrasts. We absolutely know that Bill Clinton traveled on Epstein's plane on 26 or 27 flight segments after he was president, when he needed money, when his reputation was in tatters, as he tried to put together this post-presidency. We know that. And the FBI has known that, and the Secret Service has known that, because the Secret Service keeps a lifetime tab on former presidents. Every time he travels, they know where he's going and on what plane and to do what. So the Secret Service had all these records on Bill Clinton. And the allegations against Epstein, for some reason, the FBI and the deep state agencies have decided not to charge Epstein with crimes and really put him away. We know that in 2008, 7 and 8, that there must have been deep files on Epstein. Instead of throwing him away, locking him up, throwing away the key, Dershowitz and others got him a deal that he shouldn't have gotten to barely serve time in a local prison cell near one of his places, where supposedly there were underage girls going in to meet with him while he was convicted. So I mean, this is a ridiculous double standard on Gaetz and Clinton, and it's certainly inconvenient for Clinton, because his book, excerpts of which are dribbling out, comes out on this coming Tuesday in your time. So, I mean, here we have Epstein, we have Diddy. How many congresspeople, how many senators, how many government officials in the United States of America are, under the thumb of honey traps and whatever you call it for men, as we speak, right? How many of the people who came out and supported Kamala Harris at the end of this disastrous Hindenburg of a campaign, how many of those people have ties to Diddy? Many is the answer. Many. So what was Diddy up to? And what has the FBI been up to, slow walking the investigations of Diddy and Epstein? How much of Epstein and Diddy's activities involved people inside the Justice Department, inside the FBI, and inside our government at the same parties? These are all fair questions. And of course, you're not going to get answers out of the mainstream press. Sorry.
No, that's all right. But we're out of time here, Charles. We're going to go over to the First Amendment forum so people can join us there on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsource.